but the feels like factor is significantly cooler, and there are wind gusts of up to 19, 20 miles per hour. It's very inconsistent, and this is going to be a challenging day, to say the least. Hi folks, welcome to Atlanta. Leigh Diffey, Tim Hutchings and Craig Masbach, ready to accelerate this road to Tokyo. Things get serious right here today, guys, don't they? And it's very simple, folks. 3 men, 3 women will go to Tokyo this summer. We don't have to really delve or get worried about times per se, because this event has been given the gold label standard, and therefore times don't necessarily matter. It's just those top 3 positions. So who are we looking at for those top 3 in the men?
In the men's race, well, you know, the USA is the third power, the third force in the world distance running after Kenya and Ethiopia. There is good strength in depth, but 2 guys really stand out. Galen Rupp, as we've already seen, the defending champion, the Olympic bronze medalist in Rio. He's a banker. He's very, very consistent. If Galen was a sports car, he'd be polished, powerful, high-tech, balanced. He's had a few lumps and bumps in the last 18 months, change of coaching, some injuries, some surgery as well. But he says he's back in great shape, Galen, and he has to start as favourite. Multiple US medalist, record holder, I should say, on the track. And Jared Ward, well, he's a banker as well, really consistent. He's a family SUV. He's not a fast sports car, but he's well looked after. He's high quality. He'll get you where you need to go with the family. And of course, he was 6th in Rio at the Olympic Games. He's a statistician, and he's a smart racer, so watch him carefully.
And he'll get you where you need to go with a big smile on his face as well. So that's the men. Craig, how about in the women? We saw a snapshot of Des Linden there at the top of the show.
Well, she's amazing, and the women's race, like the men's race, is a race of contrast. In the form of Des Linden, you have a woman who's running her 20th marathon. She's been on the Olympic team twice, and she is so tough, as we saw in that Boston Marathon win. On the other hand, look at Emily Sisson. It's only her 2nd marathon ever. Last year, she ran her 1st marathon in London, ran the fastest ever debut marathon by an American. But to make this a real reality show, you know, you can qualify for this Olympic Trials Marathon by running a good half marathon. Molly Seidel did that, and she's running her 1st ever marathon here. Imagine that. You can run your 1st ever marathon here and qualify for the Olympic team.
If the chilly temperatures and wind aren't enough, well, how about this course? It's time now for Making the Team, brought to you by ASICS, and boy, is it challenging, fellas.
It is such a tough course, this. It's 3 laps of 8 miles and then a 2-mile run into the finish. But that 8-mile lap, I'll tell you what, in my 30 years of commentating on marathons, it's probably the toughest course I've ever seen. It is unforgiving, undulating all the time. There's hardly a flat meter in it. And in this animation, when they're going uphill, you'll see red. When they go downhill, you'll see green. It's really very, very tough, and it makes it a real lottery.
Rich Kenna, who runs the Atlantic Track Club, which is putting on this race, calls the course Atlanta flat, which is to say it's not flat. And for me, one of the most interesting parts of the whole course is the 400-meter run to the finish line, which is a very strong downhill. Imagine running an entire marathon and having to sprint downhill to get that Olympic spot. It should be interesting.
This is going to be a big challenge for sure. For those of you who know the ATL well, it zigzags across the 75-85 underneath. And we're going to get things going. The 4-time Olympian, the Olympic silver medalist, the official starter, getting the men's race underway here in Atlanta, the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials. And as Meb waves the men off, Meb will also come up here to the set and join us a little later in the broadcast.
Great crowds here in the Centennial Park to get this race going. And it's part of a whole weekend of racing in what they call Running City USA. And I think it's entirely appropriate that the race begins by running uphill.
Well, they better get used to it. I've counted at least 8 climbs in this race, spread throughout that lap that they cover 3 times. It's kind of one of these things where it keeps slugging you. You know, you think you're recovering on the downhills, and of course running downhill has been tough as well. Indeed, sometimes more punishing on your legs. But those uphills just keep coming at you. So it's a race which I called it earlier on a lottery. It's going to be a cerebral race too, a real test of your racing nous. Do you sit in and just not do any work but get dragged along? If somebody goes out really hardly, you know, what do you do? You've got to make decisions on your feet, so experience counts for a lot.
And for those of you who know Atlanta well, and particularly the downtown section, you saw the start there right in front of the College Football Hall of Fame and the very familiar landmark here in Atlanta, the Omni Hotel, as the men's race is underway. And just listening to the athletes in the time that we've been here in Atlanta just talk about how this course has really given them something to think about, how they've had to really build this into their training regimens.
Well, if you think about the big city marathons that we see around the world, Chicago, London, Berlin, those are generally flat as races, and they have pacers. And neither of those conditions are here today. So where a lot of these runners have run their best times are in conditions completely different. So when they got ready for this race, they had to be, as Tim said, very cerebral about the fact that they were going to need to prepare for those 8 hills on each of the 3 laps and be ready as well to run the downhills. We heard that from some of the athletes, that yes, uphills are taxing, but downhills also beat your legs up.
Tim, you blew me away before. You're an Olympian in your own right. Distance running has been your life and your post-athletic career in television. You said before you believe this is the most challenging marathon course, big marathon course you've ever seen.
Well, it is, and hills make races doubly tough. I mean, as if a marathon distance isn't tough already. In the UK, we have a half marathon, the biggest in the world. That's the Great North Run. It's just like this. It's undulating. It's a point-to-point. It drops about 200, 300 feet. But actually, it's a very, very tough course. It's like Boston. Boston is a downhill course. I think Boston drops 350 feet. But it is so punishing on your legs.
Well, and there was a reason why they chose this type of course, because the original Tokyo Marathon course was supposed to be similar to this. A lot of challenging hills on a looped course. Then, of course, for different reasons, the IOC moved the Olympic Marathon to Sapporo, where it's going to be pancake flat, only 1 hill in the whole race. It kind of took away the rationale for this to be a hilly race, but they'd already set this up.
So you heard Tim say that this is the most challenging Olympic marathon trials course that he has ever seen. Well, guess what, folks? It's also the largest U.S. Olympic marathon trials field. There is Abdi Abdirahman out in front. How big is it? Take a look at this. There were actually 711 official qualifiers. It eased back and trimmed back to 685 in total. That is colossal.
It's about a 95% increase on any Olympic trials ever before. 235 men, 450 women, the official start numbers. And yet they have had to say to all of those athletes, the organisers at Atlanta Track Club, who have done an incredible job, you can have personal drink bottles on the course. And that is unprecedented. It's probably 5 or 6 times bigger, that demand on the drinks tables on the course, than ever before. We're going to talk about that more later on. But it's a huge logistical challenge. You can imagine 450 women coming to those drinks tables on the road.
Well, speaking of those drinks bottles and everything at stake, here's Lewis Johnson a little earlier.
Well, logistics are everything in a major marathon like this, and what I'm looking at, this is just mind-boggling. The beginning of 5 blocks of tables in this personal hydration station. This is where the elite athletes will pick up their personal water bottles like the ones we see right here. Karen Lamphere and her team have been out here preparing everything. And Karen, how many elite athletes asked to have their bottles here, and how many bottles are on the course today?
We have 528 athletes that have opted into our Elite Fluids program, and we have 3,200 bottles out here today.
3,200. So I see one table here. This is table 11. Actually, how many tables for the men and the women?
So we're in the men's section now. The tables are dressed in blue. There are 24 men's tables, and about 200 feet later, we have 36 women's tables on the course dressed in red.
Just unbelievable. And finally, this is really neat to see how this is all going to be laid out. Somehow they'll get to these bottles. How long have you guys been working on this plan to execute today?
We've been working on this plan for over 8 months.
That's incredible. So imagine a major marathon. You might have 40 elite men, 40 elite women, about 80 bottles here, over 500. The first pass at mile 2 is going to be something. You guys have done a tremendous job. Good luck today.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks to Karen, thanks to Lewis, and of course that was recorded a little earlier before things got going. And some 3,200 hydration bottles in preparation for the 685 athletes in today's U.S. Olympic Marathon trials. And earlier this week, a tradition continued, a fun tradition of the bottle decoration. They get a little Well, easily recognizable, right? make that grab and go.
Well, it's
more convenient.
It's a serious business because you're coming into the table at 5-minute mile pace. You've got to spot your bottle, get your hand around it, and then, of course, drink from it while you're running. And that is not easy. It takes practice, and all the athletes do practice that.
So the men's race is up and running, and the women's start is just moments away. Quick break. We'll come back to get the start of the women's here in Atlanta. Stay with us. On NBC. As we welcome you back to a chilly, breezy day in Atlanta, Georgia for the 2020 U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials. It's Luke Peskedra who has had the front of this field for a good portion now over Clayton Albertson. If they have eased away from the pack, Abdi Abdirahman had the early lead, but it's Peskedra who is making quite an interesting comeback to running, competitive running.
As far as we know, he had retired in February of 2019 when he announced he was running here. Really, no one had any sense of what his fitness might be. He'd become a real estate broker in Eugene, Oregon. Of course, he's thinking back to 2016 where he was 4th in this marathon Olympic trials.
And you have to respect Luke Peskedra if he's put in the work. I mean, he's a 2:10 marathon runner. He ran that in Chicago back in 2015. 6'4", he's a massive guy. I tell you what, if you wanted slipstream behind somebody in these wins, that's not a bad choice.
And I don't think he's enjoying Albertson doing what he's doing. You're doing exactly that, just tucking in and using him as a windbreak. About 40 seconds away from the start of the women's race. And again, Meb Kavleski is right there to be the honorary starter. We'll chat with Meb a little later in the program about what he's up to now in retirement. The 4-time Olympian. Look at Peskedra. He is not happy with Albertson at all.
Well, I hate to say it, but in my very mediocre road running career, I often did what Albertson did there, running behind others on windy days.
Get ready for the women's race to begin. Des Linden closest to camera. Meb signals the start, and away the women go. An enormous field. More than double the men's field here in Atlanta, and 3 spots in Japan this summer at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics up for grabs. And reiterating a point for those of you just turning on, nothing to do with times, Tim, here today. It's the top 3 men, top 3 women, simple as that.
No, exactly, and that's what's so beautiful about it, very black and white. You know, the USA, I think only the USA and Japan are major powers in the world of distance running that have trials races specifically to select a team. But even the Japanese don't say 1, 2, 3. I think it was the first 2 in their race back in September, October.
I was at the race, and it really took away something there, because the 3rd place finisher to this day doesn't know whether they're going to the Olympics. In fact, it's tomorrow in Japan at the Tokyo Marathon. If no runner breaks the Japanese record on the men's side, then the 3rd place finisher, Suguru Osaka, will go, but he'll only find that out tomorrow.
Yeah, so I think it's that fairness, that the USA, being so powerful with strength in depth in many disciplines, in track and field as well as road racing, can afford that policy. Most nations don't have really strong world-class athletes in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th positions maybe in their rankings. So they need to prevaricate and think about their selection policy and maybe have some discretion. The USA can afford to go 1, 2, 3. And of course, the history of American trials on the track is littered with massive names who have been injured or ill or finished 4th and have a bad day at the trials, even though they might be world #1 away from those trials.
Over the years, there have been discussions about maybe doing a different format of some kind. Could we choose certain athletes? Could the U.S. choose certain athletes in a way different from the 1, 2, 3 in the trials? And no one's ever come up with a better system. Let the athletes decide the outcome by racing head-to-head.
And that's exactly right. You know, there's a magic to this. There's a uniqueness. There's something, it creates a buzz in the air. I mean, it's almost tangible here in the center of town because this is so important. You know, and what's beautiful too about this is you've got nearly 500 ladies able almost to touch the Olympic rings. You know, this is their moment of glory. The vast majority of them won't get a sniff at a place in the first three, but this is special, and I like that way that it's filtered down. The Olympic rings have filtered down.
Des Linden on the far right of your screen there, Sarah Hall. And it was interesting to hear Des say yesterday that she will be drawing on her 7 Boston marathons to get through this one, specifically referring to the elements and the gradient of the course.
Well, she hasn't had the smoothest of preparations. She told us that she had the flu during her build-up for this race. So every marathoner sort of chooses a period of time, often around 12 weeks, to get ready for the big race. And almost everyone we spoke with had some kind of difficulty, whether it was the flu, a couple of the athletes, Des being one of them, in some cases a small injury of some sort that they had to overcome. And that's just the nature of this event. I think it was Molly Huddle who said you always have to train right on that line between health and injury.
But you know, sometimes maybe that is actually almost a better way of preparing, is to have some little interruptions. If you're coming a 12 or 16-week build up to a marathon, those little breaks where you get a cold for a few days, where you're injured for a week or so, they let your body recover as well. Sometimes the unrelenting, sort of punishing schedule of week in, week out hard training might not be optimal.
So, on the team here today, you've already heard from Lewis Johnson. We are so excited to welcome to the NBC Sports team an Olympian and Olympic medalist. Take your minds back to Athens 2004 and this run home. It's hard not to get emotional just looking at it. Deena Kastor on the way home to bronze in Athens, a moment that she describes as intoxicating. One of the greatest moments of her life, standing on the podium, seeing the stars and stripes and being awarded that bronze medal. As we say, hi Deena, welcome to the team. And what are your thoughts on this course? How would you like to run it?
OMG, good morning from the streets of Atlanta, where I have been given the best seat in the house this morning in front of 400 male marathoners in America.
And we will check
America today. And I said that.
We'll just check back in with Deena in a moment. Of course, always it is challenging amongst the high-rise buildings. They're in downtown and then working up through midtown Atlanta.
You know, Lee, I was in the old Olympic Stadium, the 1896 Olympic Stadium, when Deena Kastor came in that third place position. In fact, I was standing with her husband Andrew and her agent Ray Flynn. She had not been in picture the whole way. She hadn't been on the leaderboard, and suddenly she showed up in the picture with 2 kilometers to go, clearly running faster than anyone else. You saw how fast she finished the race. We all started crying when we saw her come into the picture. It was such an emotional moment and such a great moment for Team USA.
Quick checking in with the men there. Pesqueira still at the front. Dan Nesta had eased ahead of Clayton Albertson, but they were in the top 3. And Des Linden and Sarah Hall at the front of the pack in the women's. Three spots each up for grabs here in Atlanta, and both races now underway. On their road to Tokyo, visit the Google Play Store and iTunes to download the Team USA app today. As we welcome you back to Atlanta, men's race, women's race underway here on a very cool and breezy day in the ATL. And there has already been some interesting things going down and transpiring in the men's, and a couple of early breakaways have now been brought back to the pack. So as those races are in progress, I'll pick up a topic that has been a pretty hot topic over the last 3 years. The running community has mentioned earlier, you're an Olympian, a terrific athlete. You've been a long time organizer of an event in your homeland in the UK as well. Before you make your statement or your opinion, do you have any affiliation with any shoe manufacturer?
Absolutely not. No, I'll take anything I'm given.
All right. On a more serious note, what is your take on this very, very hot topic?
You know, it is a hot topic, and it's a very tough one. It's emotive. And, you know, first of all, I have to say that, you know, the big shoe companies underwrite the sport. I mean, track and field wouldn't be where it is if it wasn't for the fact that these shoe companies put so much money into it. But these shoes, You know, they've started creating fake PRs, fake PBs for people. People are performing way beyond what they could have done. World records have been written again and again and again, rewritten in recent months at 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon on the roads. And I don't understand why people get satisfaction from running times that they could never have achieved a year ago without these shoes. All of a sudden, they're a better runner. Well, they're not. They're doing the same hard training, and they do all train hard. But I just feel it's kind of disrespected the sport almost, and you can't compare times being set now in these shoes with even performances a couple of years ago, never mind about the last 50 years of this sport. And I get the fact that technology moves on, but this has been a seismic jump, not a nice steady stepping forwards.
All right, so as we move to Craig now, we do have to disclose that our Craig Masbach is an employee of Nike in the sports marketing arena. He has nothing to do with shoe development or technology. So, mate, what's your opinion?
Well, you know, we're good friends, but we disagree on this topic because I believe that technological advancement has always been part of the sport of track and field, right? We went from bamboo poles to steel poles to fiberglass poles. We went from dirt tracks to artificial tracks, and those clearly have made a difference, not necessarily the seismic difference that you mentioned, but sometimes there have been big leaps forward. Every footwear company has tried to help athletes perform better, and as you mentioned, Lee, this new technology just takes things that have been around for a long time. Foam, which has been around since the 60s and 70s, air, which has been part of Nike shoes since the 1970s, and carbon plates, which have been part of shoes since the 1980s. They're combining it in different ways to create these new shoes. And what's happening? It's allowing athletes to perform better, which is what we've always wanted to see. It's really about athletic performance. And, you know, I think that the answer is simple because the World Athletics is struggling with this. The rule should be that no technology in shoes should return more energy than the athletes put in. So it shouldn't be more than 100% return. Anything up to that should be fair game. If the technology advances will continue, which I think they will, that's good for the sport.
All right, so I think it's a case of almost watch this space. We'll continue to talk about it as things go on. We also want to continue to chat to Deena Kastor. We're going to check back in, and let's hope we've got a clean mic and clean communication. Deena, are you there? Can you hear us?
I am here, thank you, on the streets of Atlanta in the best seat of the house. Craig and Tim stated their cases on these shoes, but I think as an equalizer here today, so many women getting here, it was about time, so carbon plates may have helped them run fast and get their qualifying marks, but with the hills here in Atlanta, we think that the shoes are a moot point. They haven't been tested on hills of this type of caliber. This is a strength course, and I think we're going to set out today.
Deena, thank you very much for that. As it is a pretty healthy size pack at the front in the women's race. As far as the men's, Galen Rupp was starting to make his way up through the pack, but it's Brian Schrader who is a little early breakaway. 2020 U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials continuing here in Atlanta, Georgia. As far as the men's race is concerned, on the left-hand side of your screen there, that's Dan Nestor, who has taken the lead from Brian Schrader. They've already eclipsed the opening half an hour of this 26.2 mile event. And we're looking center of your screen, white top, black cap, Galen Rupp, who won in Los Angeles in 2016.
Yeah, Galen running nice and steady. Look how many athletes seem to be sort of keying off him there. It's like a guard of honor around Galen Rupp there with about 6 miles on the clock. But they're going quicker than I expected, Lee. You know, the first mile was 5:04. The second mile was a 4:42, big downhill. Third mile a 4:50, a downhill. They've got to 6 miles in 29:31. And they're on schedule for just inside 2 hours, 10 minutes. So considering the nature of this course, it's pretty quick. But Craig, we are going to see these massive undulations in the downhill and uphill in the way these splits come out, the mile times.
Yeah, we've got to be very careful about taking any individual mile and drawing any conclusions from that because of those undulations that you mentioned. And you see the early breakaways, and the large pack kind of tells you where the actual race is. It's really unexpected to see someone break away so early given these conditions and given the wide disparity in ability between the guys out front and the people following. Good look at Galen that we had as we were looking at that chase pack. And Galen Rupp, as you mentioned, has had a rough go of it the last year and a half, particularly physically. where he had to drop out of the Chicago Marathon, had to have an operation. Difficult return from that operation to full health.
And here's a little timeline. We mentioned earlier him winning the US Olympic Marathon Trials in 2016 at his first attempt, and then winning bronze in Rio. But then the story isn't quite so rosy after that.
Right. I started to say he got the 5th in the Chicago Marathon, but then had heel surgery. He actually ran injured in that race. And when he came back just a year later, was not able to finish the race. And that's, you know, been the story of Galen Rupp until recently. He came out and ran a very good half marathon. Not great, not his best time, but one that he ran with confidence. And he tells us that he's back to full fitness.
Well, he ran 61 and bits in that half marathon back in the middle of early February, actually, just about 3 weeks ago. But Galen, you know, has finished 5 marathons. He's won 3 of them. I mean, he doesn't get the credit he deserves for that. He is incredibly consistent. And you can go back over this last 10 years and more at his track career. An Olympic silver medal over 10,000 meters in London 2012. So many quick times. He's the fastest non-African ever over 10,000 meters on the track. You know, his CV is astonishing in its strength of depth and consistency.
So think about everything that you've just said, Tim and Craig, and then let's remind ourselves of what he told us this week, that after surgery, he almost had to learn how to run again. I mean, that's staggering.
I saw him training a couple times in that time period, and it was sad to see. He was limping, and those around him wouldn't tell him. They wouldn't tell him that he was limping. Obviously, he knew it. It finally took his wife to say to him, you know, you're not running normally. You got to get right. He got a new PT, and that person was able to look at his imbalances, figure out where he needed to gain strength, and that's what he's really confident about now, that he's got good balance between his left side and his right side, and that allows him to run like, quote, he called it, the old Galen.
Well, the gap is about 17 seconds between the leading pair, Schrader and Dan Nestor, who's an accountant, went to Columbia. And those boys are laying it out, and that's a pretty big lead. I mean, that's pushing about 100 meters.
Well, it's good that there are 2 of them, right? When you try to make a break like that by yourself, it's very, very difficult. They've obviously made a decision. This is their move, right? You can't do this and then have a move later in the race. And the only way they're going to succeed is if they continue to work together, and even that's a very, very slim chance.
Checking in with the women's race, you see Des Linden there grabbing some water or a hydration bottle. In this front pack, guys, is 16-year-old Tierney Wolfgram, which is a phenomenal effort to be up front at this early stage. And there is Jordan Hasay, who said she made a point of going to see and meet Tierney to say, you being 16 reminded me of when I was 16, and I just wanted to come and have a chat with you and encourage you and say great stuff for being here.
You know, when Jordan was 16, she ran in the Olympic trials track and field competition in Eugene, Oregon in the 1,500 meters, and that's what she was referencing. She had an Olympic trials experience when she was 16, and she was connecting to the young woman's experience here.
You know, I mean, on track, that's one thing. I think in Europe, certainly in the UK, you're not even allowed to run marathons at 16. I think the youngest you can run a marathon is 18. So, for example, the London Marathon, they will not take what are virtually kids into that 26-mile race. Des Linden there to the right. She is such a powerful runner. I wonder, Craig, whether or not she is partially thinking, even though she signed up for Boston Marathon in a couple of months' time, if Des Linden is partially thinking, this is my course, this really does suit me. You know, it's a grinder's course, and we know she loves Boston. How many times has she done it? 8 times?
Yeah, she's such a great athlete, such a great personality. There's so much to her beyond her running. She and her husband have started a coffee company. She's an aficionado of whiskey. We asked her when we spoke with her, you know, what was her post-race plans? Because normally the Olympic trials are big city marathon. She has some elaborate vacation plan. I believe after the last Olympic trials, she went to Bali. She said, no Bali this year, but Saturday night's going to be a big party.
She said, I just hope to make the newspapers, but for not what happens on Saturday night. What happens on Saturday afternoon?
You know, a lot of the big names are across that front rank. You can see Sarah Hall there. You can see Laura Thwett, former US cross-country champion, to the left there in that red vest. And obviously Linden. I think I can see Kellen Taylor there. There's a different nature to this race, and to the left there in the two shades of blue, second to left, is Emily Sisson with the light blue armbands. So all the big names are right up there, spread across the road. And I'll tell you what's interesting is when they're running into a strong wind, you'll see a lot more slipstreaming going on than here, where we can see them about 8 or 9 across, Lee.
Sarah Hall, center of your screen in that blue top. She never expected the marathon to be her distance, but when she did her first one in 2015, she said it was like a rebirth of her career.
Hi, I'm John Mulaney, and I'm hosting SNL this week with musical guest David Byrne.
John, don't look now, but that's David Byrne.
What, he's here? Do you think he'll host?
Probably. I'm freaking out.
Okay, be cool.
Every time I go out there to compete, I'm competing against myself.
I'm just hyped. Feel like everything's turned on.
You have to be mentally prepared to go.
You make this look as good as you can because now everyone's watching and it finally counts.
Brian Schrader may not be in the super elite, but he's a 2:13 marathon runner. He did that in Chicago last October. He's from Boston. He's pretty versatile. He's an 8:29 steeplechaser. And he's only run 64 minutes for a half. That was a New York Marathon in March last year. But 2:13, if he's in PR shape, maybe a 2:11 is in those legs.
Time to check in and say hi to Lewis Johnson. Lewis?
Hey, Lee, you know, it was one of the most hot butts in Olympic team.
Check in with Lewis in just a moment.
You know, I agree with what you say about him being a versatile runner. Less than 2.5 years ago, he ran close to a 4-minute mile. So this is a guy with good speed, good versatility, as you said, given that steeplechase. A little like the steeplechase out here running on the undulating streets. Was an All-American at Northern Arizona. And that 2:13 that you mentioned was in the 2019 Chicago Marathon. So he has run in the trials. He was a finalist in the 5,000 at the 2016 U.S. Olympic trials, although he finished 14th in that race.
And Tim and Craig, you kind of got your crystal ball out and predicted this to an extent, that because time is not of the essence today, it's the places, it's the top 3, that we may see some surprise runners up front early.
We may do, and you know, after the big two, after Galen Rupp and Jared Ward, it is hard to really put your finger on a third name. So you could argue perhaps that there is that third spot almost vacant, even though we don't know that Rupp and Ward are going to make it yet. But you know, Schrader, this kind of breaks all the rules this early in a race of this importance, of this caliber, to go out like this. How many times have we seen this over the years? And there's a kind of an inevitability to what is going to happen at some point in this next hour and a half. I'd love to be proven wrong, but it doesn't too often work out this way.
Well, you know, I've already gone on a limb and said he's not going to make it, right, as you've just done. But this is about dreams. That's the amazing thing about Olympic trials. And we could go through track trials and marathon trials from the past where people came out of nowhere, literally nowhere, to achieve a spot on the Olympic team, and that's why I refer to it as a reality show. When I was the CEO of USA Track and Field, I actually proposed that we hold an Olympic marathon trials that was open to anybody. You know, you've run the London Marathon, you've run the New York Marathon, you've never run the Olympic trials. You know, pay some money and come run and pursue your Olympic dream. We'd still, of course, would have treated the qualifiers like these great athletes differently, but it would have been America having the chance to try to qualify for the Olympics. And really, that's what this is too, right? Schrader is out there running for the dream that he's had since he was a little boy, because every runner in America always dreams of the Olympics.
Again, this is the largest ever U.S. Olympic marathon trials with some 685 qualifiers. The men have already begun their second loop. It's 3 loops of an 8-mile course and then a 2.2-mile leg to finish it off to make the full 26.2 from the men to the women. And the order, for the most part, is unchanged at the front there. You see Molly Huddle all in black. Spoke to Molly just probably about 2 hours ago in the hotel, and I said, how was last night? Did you get much sleep? And she said, about the same as normal race night. You know, spurts, fits and spurts, you know, you get what you can. And she's in good shape, right at the front of this pack behind Sarah Hall.
Well, nobody's committed yet in this one, have they? It's a different nature race. They did start off very, very conservatively, that first mile of 6:13. And, you know, the ladies now, well, they've just checking their data. They've gone through 5 miles in 28:54, so it is on the slow side. I mean, their last 3 miles have been 5:40, 5:43, 5:41. And that's for Sarah Hall in the blue there with the black shorts right in the center of the picture.
I want to tell you about an Alaska native, Megan Youngren, who qualified for these Olympic marathon trials by running a 2:43.52 at last year's California International Marathon. Now, while she's not likely to finish in the top 3 here in Atlanta, Youngren will make history as the first openly transgender athlete to compete at the US Olympic Marathon Trials. She came out publicly as transgender in 2012. She started transitioning in 2011, lost an enormous amount of weight, and is just thrilled to be competing here in Atlanta in these Olympic marathon trials. Quick check of the time.
Been a pretty meteoric rise too. She ran her first marathon in 2017, finishing in 4:48 at the Equinox Marathon in Fairbanks. And to have qualified for this with a 2:43 is quite something.
Well, being from Alaska, of course, these temperatures feel very comfortable to her.
It is definitely Alaska-like. Brian Schrader on the left-hand side of your screen, the men's leader. 45 minutes and just over 9 miles into this race. Believe that, even though he told me yesterday the longest distance, what was it you've run? 800 meters?
800 meters. My very first race. Very proud of that, too.
But our teammate is here because he wants to take it all in, soak it up, and kind of get revved up for the Tokyo 2020 Games. We were in Doha not that long ago. We've just had the US Indoor Championships. There is such a great feel and air of positivity about Team USA heading to Tokyo.
Yeah, and with good reason. That's because we think back maybe to 2012, the London Olympic Games. The 100, the 200, 400, and 800 meter runs for men. The U.S. got 1 medal in all those events in the bronze. And now we look at Tokyo, and the U.S. is poised maybe to win every one of those events. We think about Christian Coleman, who we saw in Doha get crowned the world's fastest man. Noah Lyles, you just saw on camera. He was on that. He's certainly one of the favorites as well. And that's before we start to talk about a guy like Michael Norman, or in the 800, Donovan Brazier, who is poised to win the U.S.'s first 800-meter gold since 1972. So it's really exciting times for Team USA, who brings a lot of balance right now.
What about if we digress and talk about hurdles? Kenny Harrison, Nia Ali, you've got Dalila Muhammad, Sydney McLaughlin in the 400. Well positioned there as well.
Yeah, it'd be a very safe bet to say that the United States will win both the hurdle events, as they did in 2016 in Rio. So, as I said, the United States team looks as good as I've ever seen it.
How about on the field side? I mean, in particular, shot put. The two giants, Joe Kovacs, Ryan Krause, are going at it again. The team, they put the team in such a positive position, and they just continue. Even though we see the guys on this level, they just continue to push and raise the bar.
So imagine going into the Olympic Games with the reigning world champion in Kovacs, and then in Krause you have the defending Olympic champion. That's just, that's so unprecedented for the United States team, and it's why we think that this United States team is going to produce a number of medals in Tokyo that maybe we have not seen before. It's poised to be one of the very best U.S. teams.
So the general theme is it's a turning point.
Yes,
it's a turning point. Perhaps back to the glory days. And speaking of glory days, just because I knew you were coming today, mate, I watched that '96 Atlanta 200-meter final one more time. Hey, you were part of a special era.
I was a college senior, and I went into the race already having won a medal in the 100, and I thought, you know, I know Michael Johnson is the favorite, him in his gold shoes, but he's going to have to really run tonight, and run he did. So even people who don't know, they have no idea who I am. I go, remember the guy, Michael Johnson with the gold shoes, yeah, I was in the back, way in the back in that race. I got third.
You weren't way in the back. You weren't that far back. Addo Bolden. And, of course, we look forward to not only the Prefontaine Classic, but the U.S. track and field trials in Eugene, Oregon at the new Hayward Field. Addo, thanks so much, mate.
Good to be here.
This is Ava.
Running career didn't begin until being asked by a friend to join a track relay team. Well, luckily you have a friend in Sports Engine. Interested in getting involved in track and field yourself? You can begin your track and field journey by going to sportsengine.com. Here you can find a program and program information of local USA track and field affiliated clubs in your area. Check it out right now. And there is Emily Sisson, center of your screen, as we say welcome back to the ATL. Atlanta, Georgia, Lee Diffie, Tim Hutchings, Craig Massback with you, Dina Castor's here, and Lewis Johnson as well. It is a cold and windy day for these 2020 US Olympic Marathon trials, but there is some great competition happening out there. Two very different structured races at the moment. There's early runaways in the men's, approaching the halfway mark. In the women's, guys, it's remained a very steady, solid pack.
It has indeed, yes, a very steady and on the slow side. I mean, they're on around 2:30 tempo, 5:44 through 4 miles. That was the split for that mile. The fifth mile, 5:42, then a 5:31, then a 5:36. They haven't really started motoring yet. You know, you almost sense there's a lot of energy and frustration in that pack that we can see, Craig, which is what, 20, 25 strong, I suppose. But nobody has really yet hit the straps.
Well, the most important thing in a situation like this is to stay within yourself. And we heard several of the athletes and coaches talk about this, that the most important thing is get at least halfway or even further without really thinking, without really making a move, without worrying about anything, and let the racing proceed from halfway on or even later over this last 6 or 8 miles.
I mean, this is disciplined, smart marathon running for the first half of the race for these ladies. They've been running for, what, 45 minutes, that's all. And, you know, they've got such a long way ahead of them, almost 2 hours of running to come. We can't even tell when they're running to these really strong winds. Our commentary position here in Centennial Park, we've got incredibly strong gusts. If it's anything like that in places out there, they're going to be rocked back on their heels. And then they've got to contend with the uphills and downhills as well. So it's much tougher than it looks. It looks like a beautiful, sunny, calm day, but I don't think it is out there.
There are gusts of up to 20 miles per hour.
Is that all? Feels like 40.
I know. Hey, we promised you that we would check back in with Lewis Johnson. Let's try that now, Lewis.
Hey, Lee, it was one of the most iconic moments in Olympic history. That was back on July 9th. Racing is complete. What a sight to see. Memory, of course, great for these athletes here today. Lee?
And I can tell you guys that it is so special and meaningful to the city of Atlanta. I lived here for many years myself. My children, my sons were born here. It is a real point of pride, even all these years later. You know, what are we, 24 years on? It is an immense source of pride to the people of Atlanta.
Well, the city has changed dramatically, apparently, since I was here in '96 for those games. I used to drive in with Steve Cram, a great middle-distance runner at the time, for a company we were commentating for. We used to drive in every morning, park about 100 yards from the stadium, and stroll to our commentary position. You couldn't park 3 miles from the stadium in the Olympic Games in the way that they're rolled out these days. And walk to your commentary position. It just doesn't happen yet. The security, everything was at a different scale.
From the women's to the men's, let's check in and get a feel for things, and it is pretty much the same. Brian Schrader has a commanding lead. It's still Dan Nestor in second, but he is way in the background, and that's what's happening first and second. Let's check in with the pack.
Well, that lead been built up by Schrader is astonishing. He's got 15 seconds on Nestor and 55 seconds on the pack. That was about 5 minutes ago. You can see that would be about a 300-meter gap. But nobody, I think, is panicking here. I mean, they've been running for just under an hour now, and there's plenty of time.
And plenty of time for people to check out Jared Ward, one of the favorites for this event. Let's find out a little bit about the man they call the Professor. The 31-year-old who just has such a pleasant and happy disposition. He is a really intriguing guy, fun to be around. And interestingly, I mean, it's kind of like saying to a kid, no, I'm sorry, there's no more candy left. He said, there's no data on this course. And he said, that's going to confuse people. And I think that this race really, with the undulation and the conditions, is going to be more like a 28-mile marathon.
Yeah, no, he was really thoughtful and, as you said, happy. If demeanor is what determines a good outcome in the marathon, certainly he had the best and most positive demeanor of anybody. But I like how he brings one of his careers to his other career. He said prior to the 2016 Olympic trials, he saw himself with a 35% chance of making the team. We asked him, what are your chances this time? He said 70%. Of course, the experts think he's a lock, but he only had it at 70%, using the best statistics that he had.
Well, he's in about 14th place at the moment. Can't really see Jared Ward. He's in the middle there in that pack, but not too far from the front end. I say the front end, this is a chasing pack, 300 or 400 yards behind Brian Schrader, of course. But Jared apparently said he's had his best ever preparation for a marathon. Everything has gone to plan. He ran a really solid 61 minutes, 36 seconds for a half marathon in Houston. Anything down around 61 minutes, that is world-class running for a half marathon. And he has that confidence, I guess, of a guy who hasn't yet run a bad marathon. He's got it right just about every single time.
And I love the fact that his coach, Ed Eyestone, a two-time Olympian, sort of balances him out, right? He's super analytical, wants to analyze everything to death. And Ed Eyestone, the guy who's done it himself, says, you know what, just go out and run, you'll be fine.
Yeah, be really fit and run and you'll be fine. Don't worry so much about the numbers, but of course that is Jared Ward's love. Brian Schrader continues to lead the men's marathon. The 2020 U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials here in Atlanta, Georgia, and the men have crossed halfway, and that is Brian Schrader leading the way and convincingly so. But guys, what do you see of him physically at this halfway point?
Well, for my take, he's gone through in under 2 hours, 10-minute tempo, 64.53. 32 seconds ahead of Nestor, 48 seconds ahead of the pack, but there is still that inevitability for me. You know, he's a big, powerful lad. He's looking strong, but hey, anybody can look good, Craig, for 25k in a marathon, maybe to halfway, 15 miles, 17 miles. You know, a lot of people say halfway in a marathon is 20 miles. You know, let's get this right.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell because, you know, it depends on whether he's running up or downhill. He's looked a little rougher in patches than he did earlier on, and you know, we were talking off camera that this reminds us a little bit of the Tour de France, right? You see these breakaways, it's just part of the game, and then the pack gets together and decides, okay, we're going to close that distance, and they've already started to. Remember, you mentioned he had a 55-second lead, now it's down to 48, and as you say, there's an inevitability to this, but hey, the guy's personal best is close to 2:14, 2:13.57 in Chicago. He's gone through in 2:10 pace on a very, very tough course, but you never know. This could be his breakthrough race.
Second place is Dan Nestor, and he completed that half marathon distance in 65.25. And he has been in the top three runners pretty much the whole way. Remember, 3 8-mile loops and then one short 2.2-mile loop to finish this Olympic marathon trial off. And there is the pack looming large.
Well, you remember I mentioned that Molly Seidel qualified with a half marathon. So did Nestor. He's never run a marathon. This is his first marathon. He ran a 1:02.57 half in Indianapolis in order to qualify for this race. So he's in completely uncharted territory right here.
Well, that territory is called no man's land. I mean, this is archetypal no man's land. There's a breakaway lad 300 yards up the road from the pack. The pack's only about 100 yards behind Nestor. And you sort of think, well, look, you'd be better off now running a couple of miles real easy, letting the pack close up on you, resetting, rebooting, and trying to stay in that pack for as long as possible, because this is kind of neither one nor the other. And they are closing down on him, I would suggest. That gap is what, about 8 seconds now, something like Nestor. Maybe a little bit more, but Rupp to the right of picture there. That's interesting, just running his own line. Rupp, Estrada, Abdi Rahman. Wow, what a career he has had. He's still up there. Mayo, the early leader. Matt Lano very much up to the fore in that lead pack. Jared Ward, of course, running sensibly. He'll be thinking. You can almost hear his brain ticking over, clicking over, like an old-fashioned computer, almost an abacus, I think, in the mind of the Mormon, who I think is still a dead cert for the team, barring disaster.
And you saw one of the complications of this course, given the fact that it's a loop course, a lot of turns. Galen Rupp was all the way over on the right of screen. He suddenly saw that the water stop was coming up, the fluid station. He had to go completely across the street to get to his bottle, which he did pick up successfully.
And just to reiterate how strange it is that these drink stations, special drink stations for these athletes, are every 4 miles. All major city marathons around the world, hundreds and hundreds of them, have those drink stations every 5K, and there are 8 bottles out there for the athletes, obviously 5, 10, 15, 20K, and so on. And there's Nestor Bincourt.
From them. Well, you think about that, the hydration stations and the frequency of them, and think about what Bernard Lagat, who is in this in just his 3rd marathon distance in this US Olympic marathon trial. He went back to Kenya for 6 weeks to train with the likes of Eliud Kipchoge, etc. Said that there's no drink stations, there's nobody there to hand you anything. You're just running. So he said this will be like a luxury. This will kind of be a little bit odd to have all of these hydration stations.
But he told us, you know, his inexperience in the marathon leaves him a little bit worried about the drink stations, because he said he's just not very good at running at 5-minute mile pace or faster, picking up the bottle and getting a good drink. You know, it's not just water. There's a special mix that each athlete has. It changes during the race according to whether they feel they need nutrients, glycogen, whatever it might be. And so, you know, it's important to get your bottle. It's important to drink the contents. It's all part of the strategy of the race.
Interesting to see Abdi there pushing on at the front of the pack. Abdi Abdirahman and Galen Rupp slotting in behind him. And is that Mayo back in 3rd place as we see them now? You just get the impression that there's a little bit of a cranking up in effort here. And Abdi seems to be the man that has instigated that.
In the women's, Emma Bates, Emily Sisson, Laura Thwaite, Sarah Hall, Molly Seidel, Kellen Taylor. It is a terrific pack at the front, and it's been that way right from the start. We've been talking a lot about Des Linden, of course, who finished in the top 3 in 2016 and went to the Rio Olympics, and of course since then won the 2018 Boston Marathon. Here's more from Des. Have a listen.
The win in Boston was unexpected for me. I guess I always had dreamed of it, but coming off the 2016 game.
Isn't it a beautiful story? Just when you think you're at a particular stage of your career, that can be something that turns it in a totally different direction.
Yeah, and you think about this. This is her 20th marathon. When we spoke with her, she said she never dreamed she'd be running so many marathons. And as you point out, it was that 2018 Boston win that sort of caused her to recalibrate what her career would represent. But I love the fact that, you know, she talked about her victory being a tiny part of the movement of women's running. And she paid an homage to the pioneers of women's running, who she listed as Joan Benoit Samuelson and Dina Castor.
I was watching and listening to you guys there. I was stranded in Boston Logan Airport for about 6 hours because the weather was so bad that day. We could never forget Des's victory in Boston as we welcome back in another marathon legend, Dina Castor. Dina.
Thank you so much. As we rock and roll up and down on this course, this has been a fascinating race to watch. We're down to 20 runners. But one thing that stuck out with Desiree yesterday when we were talking to her is she said this course will make you question yourself all day long. And I think this is where her experience really comes into play. You saw her on the windy section of this Peachtree Road that she really tucked in. I'm looking at the leaves as an indicator of which direction the wind is blowing, and it is all over the place. So Desiree definitely having the most experience in being able to tuck in here. She also said that she expected a changing of the guards here, to see a couple fresh faces on the podium after today's race. And she said 2 fresh faces because she wanted to be one of them, and she's an iconic figure in this sport already. So she wanted to inspire the next generation, help shape and mold them, and we see them here today. Although Laura Thweatt, who we see on the left of your screen in the black, she's more of a veteran of this sport. She ran the 2016 Olympic trials in the 10,000 meter, where she was 5th. In front of her in that race was Kellen Taylor. You see her in the middle of the screen in the white cap, bobbing up and down in the middle of the pack. So those 2 women definitely have something to prove out here. We saw Jordan Hesse just at the last water station take the lead really for the first time in this race. And her uniform today is paying homage to the late Kobe Bryant of the LA Lakers, which I think is really sentimental. You know that inspiration travels across the sporting world, and we could take the dedication of Kobe, the fierceness of Rusi, the joy of Usain Bolt, the grace of Simone Biles, the intense experience of Mickelson, or the ego of Ronaldo. It's just amazing to see how these women are drawing inspiration to make this Olympic team here today. Back to you guys.
Good stuff, Tina. As the men are rapidly approaching the 3rd and final loop on that 8-mile loop. We'll check back in with them when we come back.
Jordan Burroughs, an Olympic champion.
Can I do it again?
There is a new race leader, and it is the 2016 Marathon Trials winner, Galen Rupp. He's going shoulder to shoulder with Brian Schrader.
Well, I'll tell you what, the story can be told in mile 15. Schrader took 5:06 for that mile, Rupp 4:51. So Rupp took 15 seconds out of him in 1 mile. Now Rupp looked very uncomfortable on that U-turn just then, and Schrader has momentarily retaken the lead. But this is beginning to unfold, to roll out the way we expected. And Galen Rupp there bouncing along in that characteristic style.
You know, those U-turns get more and more difficult as it gets later in the race, and your muscles are more and more tired, and you also don't want to go too quickly to risk slipping there. But Rupp taking control, at least at this moment, of the pace, and dragging a few other people with him.
And this is right here in downtown Atlanta as they have begun the 3rd and final 8-mile loop. It's a 2.2-mile loop to finish once they get through this. As this course kind of zigzags, it weaves its way across the eastern side of the 85-75 downtown connector and then heads directly north up Peachtree. Many of you who have been to Atlanta over the years, you know that there are so many streets called Peachtree. There's Peachtree Road, Peachtree Street, Peachtree Battle, Peachtree. It's all over the place, but it is Peachtree all the way up north of 17th Street on the way up towards Buckhead through Midtown, and then they do that sharp U-turn and come back on down. But this is where Galen may assert his authority on this marathon.
Absolutely. I mean, he's just covered his 16th mile in 4:57. Schrader a 5:20. So Rupp here has taken the gloves off, so to speak, to use boxing parlance, and is just beginning to stride out now. There are others trying to get with him. You can see in the slipstream, almost single file. 1 or 2 athletes stronger behind him. We'll ID those for you as soon as we can. But Rupp, I think, here is racing in earnest. He's obviously been holding back a long, long time, but it's good to see, Craig, Galen, after a really tough year and a half, looking as fit as a fiddle, as we would say.
Well, impressive to see him take the lead. You would have thought all the unknowns about whether he could run the marathon distance after dropping out of his last marathon. As you mentioned, the difficult year and a half. Now he's backing off the pace. Yeah, asking the great veteran Abdi Abdurrahman to share the leading duties. And Galen Rupp, a guy who trains by himself almost all of the time. This is unusual for him to have others to run with.
Let's check in with Lewis Johnson, because Lewis has watched all of this unfold. That is the Rupp chase down of Schrader, and then this reformed front pack. Lewis?
You might want to wait, Lindsay. I'm in the buildings. I'm losing audio.
And that is Lewis there. He knows that he's in a difficult transmission position there.
Well, that was interesting because Rupp put in a surge for a few minutes, built up a lead, raked in Schrader, and then has very visibly eased off, as if to say, right, you know, we've reset the race. Here we go. We've got, what, an hour and 22 on the clock. We've probably got about 45, 50 minutes of running to come. And we'll have a reset and let's take stock of things. So it's almost like Galen is having a breather here with Mayo and Abdi beside him.
You know, if you're feeling good, not a bad way to do it, right? It's makes it a little less painful. All you got to do is be in the top 3. That's what it's all about. Of course, he mentioned he wants to win the race, but if another couple of people drop off and they've gapped the rest of the field, suddenly you're on the Olympic team and you haven't had to take any risks. If he had taken the lead and continued to push it, there's always a risk involved.
And he openly acknowledged kind of cherishing that opportunity here in Atlanta this year at these Olympic marathon trials because time was not of the essence. It was the top 3 positions. You didn't need to go out and push it too hard. It has been a dramatically different, the complexion of the 2 marathons, the men's and the women's. Women's so different with that lead pack, that large lead pack staying together for the entire time. While here you've got Abdi, you've got Rupp, you've got Mayo. 2 very, very different races, and you've got all of the favorites from the women all together.
Yeah, 72 minutes on the clock for the ladies, and still no committal. Nobody has really tested this field, pushed on. Laura Threet was leading for a couple of miles, and there she is right in the middle in that sort of reddish top with the black bottoms, but they're all right around her. I mean, that's what, 12, 15 strong, that group. And again, it's a slow, steady build-up here for the ladies.
There will be some disappointments because you get that feeling that it's just going to be so tough where you have to draw that line after 3rd place. Who will make it and who will not? Quick break, and when we come back, Meb's here. Meb is in the house. Yeah, this is tough. This has been just such a competitive affair in the women's.
Well, just looking at their mile times, you know, they went through 10 miles in a pretty sedate 57:02, a 5:28 that 10th mile, and then a 5:36, a 5:35. Kellen Taylor beginning to make a presence felt there in that white top and the white cap.
Need to just let you know that just at a moment's notice, we may be breaking from the marathon coverage for President Trump to speak at a press conference in regards to the coronavirus, and we are just awaiting word on that. And speaking of the coronavirus, it's been such a big part of the conversation, guys. We've been chatting about it these days. There's been speculation as to what the impact might be on this summer's Tokyo Olympics. This week, the International Olympic Committee said in a statement, and I quote, "The preparations for the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020 continue as planned. The IOC is in contact with the World Health Organization as well as its own medical experts. We have full confidence that the relevant authorities, in particular in Japan and China, will take all the necessary measures to address the situation." The Tokyo Marathon, by the way, which Craig was talking about a little earlier, it'll be run later today. It's been restricted to elite runners only to mitigate any risk.
Well, as you know, I now live in Tokyo, and there's no doubt that they're taking all the necessary precautions there, considering closing school early and things like that. But, you know, I think it's a little too early to ring any alarm bells about the Summer Olympics.
The strange thing is that, you know, I have a fear that sport is kind of being picked on as the fall guy. You know, I was in the London metro system, the tube network a few days ago, packed with, you know, a couple of million commuters every morning. If you're going to stop large gatherings, then it really is a huge thing to take on. I've got friends who are booked to go to the Tokyo Marathon. They've taken the time off work, booked the flights, booked the hotels, booked the place in the race. They're still going to go out there for a long weekend and enjoy some time in the Japanese capital. So that, you know, they're not stopping people travelling, which of course would be extreme, but it's a real dilemma.
Galen Rupp and Augustus Mayo, first and second in the men's marathon on the left-hand side of your screen. This is a part of a tremendous comeback story for Galen Rupp in his pursuit of another Olympic appearance and perhaps another Olympic medal. And he said, you know, within your entourage, within your support crew, within your family, you have to use everybody at your disposal. Sometimes you have to really listen to them. My wife in particular, he said, told me that around that Chicago Marathon where I was probably a bit too stubborn and I pushed it coming back from surgery and recovery and rehab, and my wife just said to me, you're kind of half limping. You don't look like yourself. You're not running like yourself. And you need to listen to those people in your support crew and your family.
No, absolutely right. It's easy to forget that every one of these athletes is the spearhead of a support team. You know, coaches, physicians, masseurs, agents, husbands, wives, family, who make huge commitments on behalf of the athletes. So we've talked about the hopes and dreams of these athletes. There's so many people watching this and on the streets of Atlanta who have got their hearts in their mouths as well.
Well, it was only 4 years ago on the streets of Los Angeles, California, that here on NBC Sports we were commentating about who and commenting on who may make it to Rio. And front and center, along with Galen Rupp, was Meb Keflezighi. He was right at the front. They were dueling, they were dicing for a spot at the Rio Olympics, and we want to take you back there. Weather conditions and topography, very, very different. And Meb thoroughly soaking it all in, knowing that he had a ticket to go back to another Olympics, his 4th Olympic Games. Family on hand to congratulate him. And here he is here. We said going to the break. Meb was in the house. Meb, welcome. Bumped into your brother in the elevator in the hotel yesterday, and although you are retired, retirement doesn't mean that you're not doing much. You're busy.
I am busy, but I'm so honored to be here at the Olympic Trials for the marathon, and on behalf of the Atlanta Track Club, trying to bring it here as an ambassador and to see the competitors, the best of the males and females, trying to represent our country in Tokyo, and to be here for that is a great honor.
So Craig, Tim, myself, Dina Castor, Lewis, we've all been talking about it all broadcast long. What do you make of this course and the weather conditions, in particular the wind?
Well, 26.2 miles is very challenging, and the hills of Atlanta even more, but to have that wind is just another level. So patience, I think, is going to be a virtue. You know, this here, the lead is going for the men, set up right now. Right now, just got to get who's in the top 3, you know, to make that decision, and obviously the decision be made now, and can they hold on to the finish line?
Well, you got Abdi Abdirahman, an old warrior who was on many teams with you over the years. What do you think of seeing him out there?
Well, it's always inspiring to see him and Bernard and others that are on the females or are in the age. You know, he was my roommate in 2000. That's 20 years ago, and those people have driver license, going to college or trying to get ready to get their, legal age to drink. So it's been a long time, but to see him run there is great. You know, just very inspiring, and obviously, he's a tough competitor at heart, and he's there to try to exchange with the young ones.
Meb, how badly would you like to be out there now? I mean, I know you've been retired for a little while, but I mean, there has to be a part of your heart that is thumping and saying, geez, I'd like to be in the thick of that.
Absolutely. I mean, once you're part of that sport, so you're always going to be part of it. And for me, it was in the back of my head when I did my last competitive marathon at the New York City Marathon. I got the qualifier, but they did an amazing job to celebrate my career, and it was hard to come back. But in the back of my head, I was thinking about it, but then, you got to be able to be thankful for what you have and those opportunities, and to be able to see those other people making the Olympic team is just as inspiring.
So we mentioned 4 years ago you were running in these marathon trials in pursuit of a 4th Olympic appearance. Bernard Lagat on screen attempting a 6th Olympic appearance here today. It looks a little bit beyond him at the moment, but what do you think? Just give your assessment on Lagat.
Lagat is talk about range, or half from 1,500 meters to the marathon, and he's been there in that career with Abdi and myself for a long time. And the range that you have to be able to be a marathoner, he did a couple of them, and the first one didn't go as well, but he broke the Masters record in Australia, and he's, right now I can see him it's not going the way he planned it to because of the weather and the mileage and the hills. That's where the 1,500 meter and the marathon distinguish.
We talked a lot about the Atlanta Olympics, given where we are here. And Bernard Lagat told us a great story about how he ran in the Kenyan trials in 1996. He made the final running a personal best in the semifinal, only finished 7th in the final, so he didn't get to come. But he was leaving to go to Washington State. He was going to be a freshman at U.S. University when the Olympic team from Kenya came back at the airport. And he got to meet some of the heroes for Kenya from that games. And that sort of sent him off with a lot of motivation to one day follow in their footsteps.
You know, it's a great story that he has, you know, and Abdi and I, back in the days, we used to compete at collegiate college. Abdi went to Arizona, I went to UCLA, so that part of it was still there. But 96 Atlanta, the 100th anniversary here, I was torn because I really badly didn't want to be here, but I was a broke college student. And Rayford Johnson, the great Rayford Johnson, his son Josh Johnson was my teammate at UCLA. He came home for me when I was at UCLA with a t-shirt that says 100th anniversary with the flags of the world, and I got inspired by that. And then to be able to see the legacy of the Olympics here in 96 and to come here for the trials is just amazing.
Family is so much an important part of a marathoner's career and journey and story. We saw your family with you in LA 4 years ago. For Bernard Lagat, he just said he wanted to show his kids, you know, whether he makes this team or not, he wanted to show his kids that at his age and at this stage of his career, that dad is still pushing hard and still pushing the limit.
I mean, being a parent is the greatest reward there is, and I'm thankful for my wife, Jordanos, for allowing me to be able to have the training camps. And yeah, my motivation in 2016 and 2012 was that, just to make sure that my girls can remember what their dad did, and to be able to take them to London Olympic Games, to take them to Rio. And you know, in London they remember more of the gelato in Italy than the race, but in Rio they definitely remember it.
Hey, you made the Olympic team 4 years ago at age 40. Abdi Abdirahman is 43 years old. What changes? What adjustments do you have to make? What's he thinking as he gets toward the latter stages of this race?
The tricky part about getting older is the mind. The mind thinks still can do it, you know, but the body sometimes out of nowhere you get a little aches and pains. But you have nutritionally, you have to adjust. Cross training, you have to adjust. You know, the mileage is not how many miles I used to run when you were like, I got to get 120 or 125. But here you got to stay healthy and do a lot of cross training.
Well, Meb, thank you so much for taking the time. Hey, congratulations on being the honorary starter as well. Thank you for coming and spend some time with me. And real quick before we go to the break, did you ever think you'd see a U.S. Olympic marathon trials with 685 qualifiers?
No, I did not. But congratulations to all the qualifiers, and Rich Khanna and his team at Atlanta Track Club did an amazing job, because the whole point, I was part of the committee that tried to bring the trials to Atlanta. The whole point was to have an experience that they will remember forever. Well, 6 of them will go to the Olympic Tokyo experience, but for the rest of them, this is the Olympic, and they treat them really well. I'm so honored to be part of that.
Thank you very much, and continue to enjoy retirement.
Thank you so much.
Meb Keflezighi, who has been an inspiration to so many, including participants in this U.S. Olympic marathon trials, who hope to go to Tokyo this summer. Some even told us they read Meb's book as motivation to do well in these Olympic trials.
I was going to say, Lee, obviously part of Meb's legacy, I guess, is the strength of US distance running these days. You know, he's been inspiring athletes in the USA distance runners for 20 years and more. I mean, it's easy to forget that Meb, before his marathon career, was a world-class 10,000 meter runner. US record holder in the 10,000, if I remember rightly. And actually, I like that. I like marathon runners who have gone through the gears of a career. They've earned their colors, so to speak, at 5,000, at 10,000, at the lesser distances on the roads. Because the old traditional model, and I think it's still the one that works best, is to actually come up through the distances, from the middle distances to the long distances in the track. And if you look at Haile Gebrselassie and Paul Tergat and Eliud Kipchoge, the reigning Olympic champion and world record holder, these are guys who have actually got the full armory. They are fantastic track racers in their time, and they are now fully fledged world-class marathon runners or world record holders, some of those names I picked out. But you know, the new generation of Africans coming straight through, especially the Africans, are going straight to the roads. You've got 18, 19-year-olds running incredible times for the marathon. That is still very, very rare here in somewhere like the USA.
Men are fast approaching the 20-mile mark.
And they're really motoring over these last few miles. Miles at 4:49, 4:40, and 4:48. Remember, the undulating course definitely affects the times that they would run on a per-mile basis. Galen Rupp now back in the lead. One of the interesting things, Tim, every time they run a very tight turn, Galen Rupp is having a lot of trouble making the turn in a tight way. So it's interesting to see if that will be a factor as they come later in the race.
Quick break from Atlanta, and we will come back as the men begin the final 6+ miles. '20 U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials, and the men being led by Galen Rupp, now 20.1 miles in to this chance to go to Tokyo in July. And he has a quick look behind. Where is Augustus Mayo? And then in third is the Atlanta Track Club's Matt McDonald. Boy, wouldn't that be a hometown success?
Well, this was expected that Galen Rupp, the thoroughbred, would pull away, certainly in the latter stages, if not earlier. Mayo having a fabulous run here. Good to see the 36-year-old. He's only got a PR of 2:12. That was in the Pan American Games in Lima, in Chile, in Peru rather, last year. So Mayo having the run of his life here, maybe heading for a PR on this course. That is astonishing. But McDonald, that is a story too.
Just an amazing story. You know, he's 21st at the 2019 Boston Marathon in 2:16, but in Chicago ran a 2:11, which was a huge breakthrough for him. And this is a guy who moved to Atlanta to attend Georgia Tech, where he's getting a PhD in chemical engineering, a graduate of Princeton. And what an inspiration for him to run now at his new home and to be running at a pace close to his personal best, if not better, and currently in a qualifying position for the Olympic team.
Just a reminder that any moment we may break away to go to President Trump at a press conference regarding the coronavirus. You'll be able to stay with us on the NBC Sports app. You won't miss a thing. But as soon as we go to the press conference with President Trump, make the switch to the NBC Sports app, or better yet, get ready to do it right now. Galen Rupp has a commanding lead over Mayo and McDonald, but that spot, that third and final spot, because Abdi Abdirahman is not that far behind. One all-important third spot.
One of the big surprises, Lee. Look, you can see there left of screen, Jared Ward down in 13th place and some 50 seconds down. So Ward's race not unfolding the way so many expected. That is perhaps one of the biggest shocks of the race so far. And McDonald, likewise, another huge surprise.
No surprise here, though.
Well, you know, we talked about it in terms of his personal best, in terms of his achievements, which Tim did such a good job of talking about at the top of the show. He was head and shoulders above everybody else, but so much uncertainty over the last year and a half as he looks back to see where people are. For him to sit there and tell us that he feels like...
You're looking at Galen Rupp, the leader of the men's marathon here at the 2020 U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials in Atlanta, Georgia. Lee Diffie, Tim Hutchings, Craig Masbach, Dina Castor and Lewis Johnson with you. And this man here, who won in 2016 to get himself a ticket to Rio and ultimately a bronze medal, has a commanding lead. Just look down the street right behind him. Nobody even close. Abdi Abdirahman, Augusto Mayo and Leonard Correa all fighting for those final two spots, second and third. Top three go to Japan in July.
Well, you know, they talk about the loneliness of the long-distance runner. Galen Rupp is anything but lonely out there because he knows he's got his family backing him here today and a huge team as well behind him, and he is in glorious isolation out there in front, and I think Abdi would like to be as well here in second place. Abdi Abdirahman, who is just got these two Army athletes behind him sort of nibbling at his heels, making a nuisance of themselves. I'd love to see him put in a little surge, lean into a couple more of these rises and pull clear Abdi. This is historic running from Abdi Abdirahman. At the age of 43, making a team.
Incredible.
Well, I mean, an amazing run for Abdi Abdirahman, who, as you say, faces a tough challenge with those two very strong Army athletes right behind him. He's trying to break them now so it doesn't come down to a sprint. I'm sure he has a lot of respect for the 10,000 meter speed of Leonard Correa, who's one of those two athletes behind him.
We'll keep an eye, though, in the background there on Jacob Riley. Will he come into the picture over these closing 2+ miles? 2.5 miles remain. Here is Riley. He'll be easy to spot in those red shorts, and he's got his eyes on that pack of three. Second, third, and fourth, Abdirahman, Mayo, and Correa for a shot at going to Tokyo in July. It's as simple as that, and we'll check in with the women's as well. It has been a fascinating race with this lead pack. Yes, the road to Tokyo leads right through the ATL, Atlanta, Georgia. It has been a memorable day. Cold and extremely windy. Gusts of up to 20 miles per hour have made conditions incredibly challenging for both the men and women in this US Olympic marathon trials. Kellen Taylor right at the front there in the women's, and Laura Thweep has been doing a tremendous job. Seidel as well. And Des Linden, you can look right through the middle. You can see a little white and fluorescent yellow. There is the Boston Marathon winner, right in the middle of the pack. She would like to be in Tokyo in a few months' time as well. Just 146 days until the Tokyo 2020 Games.
It's wonderfully poised, Lee. 1 hour 49 on the clock. They probably got 35 minutes, 38 minutes of running to come, these ladies. They negotiate that turn. Kellen Taylor looking very strong and stable, isn't she? Good core strength from her as she goes around that turn there in that white cap. And now moving to the front there, I wonder if somebody now is going to lose patience, because half an hour to go, somebody needs to start thinking about their move.
And the one thing we have been remiss to mention is no Amy Cragg, who was the winner in LA 4 years ago. Amy's just kind of had a just some niggly health woes, where she just didn't feel quite up to it, quite ready for these Olympic trials to try and get a berth in Tokyo. High above and looking down, there is the Olympic cauldron in the background. It was relit for the first time in 24 years earlier today. Great to have an Olympic feel and spirit back in Atlanta. And Galen Rupp has got that Olympic feeling. Look at that, he has left this field behind. And Riley, we said we'd keep an eye on him. Riley has caught this trio for a shot at a spot in Tokyo.
Well, that's him in the background there, right, a picture. In fact, Riley there in the, yes, in 5th place. And he is coached by an old mate of mine, Lee Troop, an Australian who was a world-class 5,000 meter runner and marathon runner. Lives in Boulder, Colorado, at 32 years old. Jake Riley is producing here the performance that his coach was telling me in the bar a couple of nights ago. He thinks he's capable. He said he thinks he's in 2:08 shape. And there is Riley right up alongside the two Army athletes. And doesn't he look strong, Craig?
Looks fantastic, and what an amazing race. It'll be so interesting to hear what was going through his mind when he was 40, 50 seconds off the pace, working his way back through the field. And he's now worked his way into 2nd place in this race. Only 15th at the 2016 marathon trials. Also ran in the track trials where he was 12th in the 10,000 meters. And interestingly, he had the same operation for Haglund syndrome as Galen Rupp. And both of them have talked about what a difficult operation it is to come back. It's a growth on the back of the heel, a bony protrusion that then affects the Achilles tendon. And he's managed to come back from that. And Galen Rupp, as we've seen, putting together really an amazing race on what we called at the beginning of the day one of the toughest courses in the world.
There's the Capitol building, but Riley missed 2 years of competition completely. He didn't have any competitions in 2017 or 2018. So to come back from this is astonishing. And there was a great quote from him, which we're all still trying to decipher. He said, "I had months and months of feeling like 10 pounds of dirt in a 5-pound bag." Now there's an enigma wrapped up in a mystery.
It sounds like an English statement of some sort, so we'll rely on you to figure it out. As Abdi Abdirahman, the 43-year-old veteran trying to make his 5th Olympic team, has put in yet another surge.
Well, I think he's trying to break with Riley, break the Army athletes.
1 more mile to go, guys. Final mile for this man here, Galen Rupp. Let's check in with Lewis Johnson. Lewis.
Well, Lee, the gloves literally just came off for Galen Rupp, and two lucky fans were able to pick him up one each as Galen Rupp is on his way to make another Olympic team. I love Tim's comment about glorious isolation, because that's what it's been for Rupp over the last several miles as he has taken over the lead of this race. But I got to tell you, he just got a water bottle not too long ago, and I thought I saw a smile come up on his face, because remember the big gap, 4 meters or so behind, when he was able to catch Brian Schrader. As he did so, when he approached the next water station, Rupp missed his important water bottle, so he didn't get it. He didn't get the fluids he needed. He just got the last one, and now Rupp is looking so strong, so fit, but so every step, he's just so focused at what's happening. I don't think he's allowed himself to enjoy it yet, even though he has a massive lead.
When he came back from surgery and participated in the Chicago Marathon, he said, perhaps I was too stubborn. Perhaps I wanted to do it as a mark instead of listening to my body, and I didn't perform the way I should. I didn't finish where I should, and that was a big message. It was a big message to myself, and I listened, and I had to take the time to get myself back to where I needed to be at peak form for this event, for these US Olympic Marathon trials.
Well, he is in peak form. You know, it's easy to forget Galen Rupp has run a 3:50 mile indoors. I mean, he is incredibly quick over the mile, over 1,500 meters. Only Bernard Lagat in this race is quicker than him. And in the last mile now, he's up on his toes. He's looking quite majestic.
And he took, I took him aside after we spoke to him as a group yesterday. I said, what makes you so confident? Why are you sure that you're back? He said, well, after I ran that 101 half marathon, a couple days later, we went to the track. I did 20 times 400 in 60 seconds. That's the kind of workout he used to do when he was training for races as short as a mile. He said, that's what gave me the confidence. Mike Smith, my coach, tells me I'm ready. I believe it.
And that speed combined with his strength. Don't forget, he said after he ran that 61-minute half marathon, he did a session afterwards to accumulate 24 miles of training, nearly a marathon. So he did another 11 miles. And we asked him what the workout was, and he went, nah, that'll be my secret. I don't blame him, I guess. But, you know, the effort that he puts in, this whole philosophy of putting in a hard session after a race is totally new. Back in the 1980s, when you and I were racing, Craig, that would have been considered more or less insane.
Galen Rupp is almost there. What a phenomenal performance. Frank Shorter got back-to-back Olympic marathon trials in the early 70s and mid-70s, 72, 76, and Rupp could emulate that right here today in Atlanta. He's going for it right at the end here. He said one of the things he likes about his new coach is that he's straightforward with him. He's not going to beat around the bush. He's not going to sugarcoat things. He just tells him, and Galen has been listening. New relationship that is formed, and formed very well, and successfully so. Fight is on for that third and final spot. If you look at the right-hand side of your screen, Riley and Abdurrahman, they're in those all-important top 3 positions at the moment.
And remember how hard that last mile is. We were looking at the topography of that mile. The last mile has a big uphill and then a very significant downhill coming to the finish line. And they seem to have that second and third spot in hand, but you can't count on anything given what these runners have to face over the latter part, the very last part of this race.
Well, this is the sort of run, the sort of quality of run, and you can see Rupp projecting himself from this performance to maybe another medal in Tokyo. Don't want to put it around his neck just yet, but I think we can put this win around his neck. But from Rupp, it is normal service resumed. It's great to see.
You saw the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in the background there, home of the Atlanta Falcons, and Rupp is coming in. They're going to finish right. He's going to finish right behind us here. You'll hear the crowd. Special area for the family and friends. Galen Rupp, as the cheers go up. He's going to do it not only in Los Angeles. Galen Rupp, the 33-year-old's going to do it here on the streets of Atlanta, Georgia, to guarantee himself a spot at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games this summer. What a performance when he surged to the front a little earlier in this race, caught the pack, and then he eased back a little bit. It was a very sensible, it was a very measured performance, and then when he started to feel in his own, he just took off. He left everybody behind. Coming down beside the Omni Hotel, this is it, final stretch. Galen Rupp is going to see the finish line momentarily here. A feeling that he experienced in very hot conditions in LA 4 years ago. Cold, breezy conditions here in Atlanta, Georgia. Two very, very different Olympic marathon trials, but Galen Rupp has done it in Atlanta. He's on his way to Tokyo. Wins the men's Olympic marathon trial. Phenomenal performance. And look at this fight for the third and final spot. Can Jacob Riley hang on from Leonard Correa? This is going to be tight.
Well, Riley's a very classy track runner as well. He's run great 10,000s on the track. Surely he's got the power and speed here. Who's going to be the unlucky fourth place or the worst place to finish?
Abdi Abdirahman now concedes second spot to Jacob Riley. Leonard Correa is giving it all he's got in these closing stages. Galen Rupp is saying, come on guys, I'm waiting for you. Who am I going to get on the plane to Tokyo with? Riley is going, and so is 43-year-old Abdi Abdirahman. What a performance.
A personal best for Riley in these conditions. What an amazing race to put together.
Hey guys, get together. Don't stay there.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've seen Lee Troop worse for wear after a marathon in one or two marathon bars, but when he was talking to me last night, he said he thinks that Riley's in 2:08 shape. I really didn't know what to think. Well, he was dead right, because 2:10.02 on this course, that second place time, has got to be worth 2 or 3 minutes, if not more. And Abdi in the team.
You see him gesturing the number 5, his 5th Olympic team, twice in the marathon, 3 times in the 10,000 meters. What an amazing race he ran. You know, it was never easy for him. You know, each time he seemed to break away, others went with him.
We'll check in with the women's when we come back. They're at almost at the 21.5-mile stage, but it's Galen Rupp. He's done it again. Back-to-back wins in the Olympic marathon trials, and he's got another shot at another Olympic medal. The 3 spots in the men's marathon in Tokyo have been decided for Team USA. Galen Rupp, Jake Riley, and Abdi Abdirahman, the oldest man to make the US Olympic marathon team in history. How about that at age 43? What a performance, what a day to remember here in Atlanta, Georgia, and our Lewis Johnson is with the successful trio.
And a big smile on their faces after contesting 26.2 miles. This is a moment you guys have all been waiting for. And Galen, just give us a sense of what it's like to have won your second Olympic trials. You're now on your way once again.
I mean, it's incredible. You know, it's almost I feel relief almost more than anything. It's been a really long year and a half, but I can't tell you how happy I am. I thank God every day for being healthy and being able to do what I love. And this is unbelievable, being able to represent the USA in Tokyo in 2020.
How did you overcome the injuries, the surgery, regain the confidence, the running form to come out here and deal with a difficult course to be here again?
It's a lot of hard work. You know, I got a lot of people that helped me out, and, you know, I knew it would be a long slog, but, you know, I kept faith in God, and you just keep moving forward. You always focus on the things that you can do, not the things you can't do. And that's the approach I took. Kept trying to be a better man, better person, better athlete. And I'm just so happy it paid off today.
All right, your teammate here, Jake Riley, is going to join you on your first team. What's it feel like to have the flag draped around you now, knowing you're going to the games?
Well, I've been visualizing this moment for, I don't know, I mean, every day, every moment, every day for the last 4 years, 5 years, I don't know. This has been a dream, so I don't know. Anybody watching TV just saw somebody that won the best race of their life and accomplish something that they've been thinking about for a long, long time. This is so transcendent right now. I'm feeling really, really good.
Awesome. Well, you're going to be bookended by another veteran. Abdi, you need to come over here for a second. Somebody told me that you're 43, and we know this is games number 5. Can you explain the moment you're having here?
You know, I just want to give thanks to God first for giving me the help to come in here. And also I want to thanks to my coach, my support. You know, like without the good coaching and good supporting stuff, I wouldn't be here. So I'm so thankful, and it's just been an amazing year for me. You know, I ran New York City. I was healthy, good training group of people who care about me the most. And I'm just so happy to be part of with Galen and Jake. You know, Galen is a great guy, man. Love Galen, and I'm glad he's a part of our team, man. You know, just it's an amazing guy.
All
All right, Abby, thanks. Guys, congratulations. We'll meet you guys in Tokyo. What do you think?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We're going to represent the USA well.
All righty, guys. Thanks so much. Congratulations.
All right, thank you.
Yes, we echo those congratulations, but now we turn our focus to the women. 22.3 miles in.
Well, you know, I talked at the top of the show about the reality show nature of this, and I mentioned a name, Molly Seidel. Molly Seidel has never run a marathon. This is her first ever marathon. She qualified by running a half marathon in December, and here she is in the last 4 miles of the Olympic trials in the lead, a co-lead that she holds with Alifine Tuliamuk.
And Tuliamuk, well, she's shed that crocheted headband that she was wearing, known for her fearless front running. Well, she's been in a battle in the race today with that big pack lead that's taken a long time to break up,
yeah.
But it has now, and they're just beginning to turn the screw. Molly Seidel's last mile, a 5:17, and the previous one was a 5:31. So they are motoring now, and it's beginning to sort itself out.
So there are some surprises here. So Des Linden is in 5th. Look a little further back, Sarah Hall has dropped to 10th. Jordan Hasse is a lot further back than where we would expect her to be. Molly Huddle is further back than where we would expect her to be, and Emily Sisson as well. So some surprises here today. What happened in the men's may happen in the women's as well.
Absolutely right. I mean, Jared Ward not getting anywhere near a place is a massive shock in the men's race, and there are some big names. You know, many people thought Sisson was the out-and-out favourite for this race today, and she's way down. She's not in the top 10. Bad day at the office for some of these ladies.
And look at how steep this hill is that they're running down now. As you see Sally Kipyego, who's in 3rd. You could see her struggling a little bit on this downhill. She normally has an elegant, long stride. And here she's obviously running with a shorter stride as she runs down the hill, but it almost looks painful, Tim.
It does, yeah. And I mean, I suppose when you've seen 3 athletes, or 2 athletes in Tuliamuk and Seidel ease away from you, you know you've hit the red zone, so to speak. So she's entitled to be hurting. She's, I'm sure now, far more concerned about the athletes in 4th and 5th, Thweet and Des Linden. Des Linden, we know, is a great finisher. She will apply herself so hard these next 20 minutes or so that they've got to come. And Kipyego here needs to keep working, needs to keep focusing. She glances at her watch there. I think she needs to be more concerned about the gaps in front of her and behind her.
Remember Des Linden's words that we played to you a little earlier, that there'll be a couple of new faces on the podium and in the top 3 going to Tokyo. And she said there'll be a couple because she was expecting herself to be one of those 3. She's got some work to do over these closing miles.
Well, there is Laura Thweet in 4th place. And I'd love to see Laura make the team. My cross-country bias will come out because she has been a 2-time, I think, US cross-country champion. Has had a lot of injuries too these last 3 or 4 years, Laura Thweet. So it's great to see her. She's stuck to the task and may well, by the looks of things at the moment, finish a frustrating 4th. But she's got to keep working away. You just don't know what's going to happen on the road up ahead of you.
Need to duck away and take a quick break. You won't miss a thing. We'll go non-stop, and when we come back on the other side of this break, returning to Atlanta, Georgia, we'll take you all the way to the finish.
It's not just the ships, the armor, or the aircraft. It's something more. It's the will to fight and determination to win, found inside each and every Marine that answers a nation's call. Battles won.
The hardest part isn't the work itself. It's not the early mornings, the long days, the late nights, the aches and the pains, or the urge to quit. No. The hardest part is not knowing whether you'll have what you need to succeed. But Team USA athletes know there's always a team behind them. Now is your chance to join that team. Donate now at teamusafund.org.
New York's dynamic duo have been putting on a show on Broadway.
Dominican, bullseye!
but they'll have to raise their game against their gritty rivals. Flyers, Rangers. Tomorrow, noon Eastern on NBC.
Jordan Burroughs, an Olympic champion.
Can I do it again? Can I repeat the success that I've had throughout the entirety of my career? I love the buzz in the arena when I step inside. There's nothing like it.
Closing stages of the 2020 U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials here in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome back. Alafine Tuliamuk battling Molly Seidel. Top 2 positions, so long as they stay where they are guaranteed. The top 3 get a ticket to Tokyo 2020 this July, and at the moment that third and final place is being held down by this runner, Sally Kipyego. And in the background, we're keeping a watchful eye on Laura Thweatt and Des Linden. Here they are. Can they do anything about that third spot in these closing 2.5+ miles?
Well, Sally Kipyego is really hurting in third place. Indeed, this battle between these two, it's partly a battle, partly working together. Tuliamuk and Molly Seidel is drawing them further clear. Their last mile was 5:25. Sally Kipyego's last mile, her 23rd mile, a 5:40. So they are widening that gap really quickly.
I mean, what do you think is going through Molly Seidel's mind right now? She's never run a race this far. A 4-time NCAA champion while she was at Notre Dame. Went away from the sport for a few years. She's talked openly about the fact she had an eating disorder. Took her a while to work her way back into the sport. She's based in Boston, where she shares an apartment with her sister. And we talked about the Army guys working. She works at a local coffee shop. And as I mentioned, she qualified in December with a 1:10:27 half marathon, which got her into this race.
Well, let's get the take of an Olympic marathon bronze medalist as we welcome in Deena Kastor again. Pretty impressive performance from Seidel.
This has been such an exciting and dramatic last few miles. The hills have really taken their tolls on the country's best runners. And to see Seidel here, I think this is a great lesson for all the young ladies watching, that she had some real struggles with her eating disorder, but she has got her power back, and it is clear right here on the streets of Atlanta today. Next to her, Alafine Tuliamuk, 30 years old, Kenyan-born, became a U.S. citizen in 2016. In her spare time, she crochets hats, but if you saw her headband earlier today and liked it, you can get it on Etsy, so visit her site there. She's a 9-time U.S. champion and one of 32 children, you guys. Can you believe that? Unbelievable. Her coach knew she was ready to run this. Of the 3 of them at Northern Arizona Elite who trained together for this race, he said she was the one to watch.
Had a creative response to recovering from injury too, Deena, and that is that not only was she crocheting her hats, she said, well, can't really do a whole lot. I may as well do some Uber driving and make some money, and I really enjoyed the interaction with my passengers.
You know what, I love the fact that these are normal human beings. Here they are on TV making their way to a place in the Olympic Games, but actually working in a coffee shop, enjoys a little bit of knitting or crocheting. So it reveals another side to these athletes when they're not in the spotlight, and I love it.
Extraordinary human beings with normal traits, maybe we could put it that way.
But, you know, in terms of Seidel, Craig, just now you were saying she's a 4-time NCAA champion, and she's been away from the sport for a couple of years. She's working in a coffee shop. You know, I love the phrase that form is temporary, class is permanent. And Molly Seidel has shown she has got real class. She is a very, very high caliber performer. She's got a great engine there. And that engine, you know, you can leave an engine idle for a couple of years and you can come back to it. Like Jake Riley in the men's race. You know, he had a couple of years without racing, but the faith had to be there. And the people around you, if they keep inspiring you, you get the right coaching, you stay in reasonable shape in other ways, get the rehab done, you can always come back. The class will always be there waiting for you.
Well, and by the way, a couple of the Seidel's NCAA titles were in cross country, so I know you respect that.
Absolutely.
And for those of you who are fans of the Fighting Irish, perhaps you are even attended Notre Dame, you can cheer for Molly Seidel. She competed collegiately for Notre Dame. And 24.1 miles in, just 2 miles remaining. We're going to give you another non-stop break, final one. You won't miss a thing. And we'll finish it off when we come back.
The sun is rising as the day begins. Time for reflecting on family and friends. And hey, we got something just for you. It's a cup of your favorite.
You dang woodchucks.
With Geico, the savings keep on going. Just like this sequel. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Welcome to my world.
They're working right now. They're doing everything and anything they can to get to one of the hardest places in the world.
Welcome to my world.
They've made a commitment to themselves, to one another, to their country. So they deserve the best. We're inspired by them. We protect them. And we do everything we can to get them where they want to go. The USOPC, working for them.
The pressure is rising in South Florida. Are you ready? See who will climb the leaderboard at the Honda Classic. Today at 3 p.m. Eastern on NBC.
Let's go.
Whatever your dream, we can help turn your inspiration into action. It's time to play. Sports Engine. Search, learn, play. And don't miss the Tokyo Olympics this July on NBC.
You're looking at Aliphine Tuliamuk and Molly Seidel, first and second in the women's marathon here at the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials in Atlanta on a cold and windy day. And Molly Seidel, guys, could do what Galen Rupp did 4 years ago in Los Angeles, and that is qualify for an Olympic Games. First time ever running a marathon. Quite extraordinary.
I'm trying to think of a previous marathon trials where someone who I would call unknown or unexpected, because Rupp came in as the favorite, having never run a marathon. Molly Seidel was kind of an interesting side bar to the race itself. You have to go back to the 1996 trials when Jenny Spangler won in a huge upset. She'd finished 49th in the 88 trials and then came back 8 years later to win. And then 4 years later in Columbia, South Carolina, Chris Clark from Alaska came in and won the trials. Also a kind of stranger to the top ranks. She was a 37-year-old pathologist from Alaska who had done most of her training on a treadmill. So there is a history of relative unknowns or people doing unexpected things at Olympic trials.
But you know, that's what is possible at marathon. You can't do that on track. You can't come out in a 1,500 meters or a 400 meters out of nowhere and produce a time that gets you into the Olympic team. You will have had a season of racing. You'll have built up to the trials. Marathon running, some of these athletes haven't raced this year. Some of them haven't raced for 5, 6 months or more. So you can come from relative obscurity and people just don't know what you've been doing. There's been no hints to your form.
For those of you just turning on, Galen Rupp has won the men's marathon. Jacob Riley second and Abdi Abdurrahman third at 43 years of age. Those three gentlemen are off to Tokyo in July. Now it's just determining the top three in the women's, and third is being held down and continues to be held down by Sally Kipyego. And there's no immediate threat from behind over these closing 1.5 miles.
Well, at 24 miles, Laura Thweatt was back in 4th place, but she's 15 seconds back. And she's running the same speed as Sally Kipyego. That 24th mile for the pair of them are 5:56. Now, in contrast, Tuliamuk and Seidel, 5:39 for that 24th mile. So they're running some 17 seconds quicker in the 24th mile. They're pulling away at an incredibly quick rate.
In the men's, Jared Ward, who was one of the favorites, did not make it. Here, we are looking at the very real fact of Des Linden not making it. Are you shocked by that?
I'm staggered. I mean, actually, there's some of the big names in the men's race. You know, Scott Fauble was 12th, Bernard Lagat was 18th. Jared Ward, wait for it, 27th in the men's race. It was a tough, tough day for some of those fellas. But I guess this course, we said at the beginning, you know, this was a bit of a lottery, this course. It throws up so many unknowns.
I felt that the difficulty of this course would take any small issue that any of the runners had and amplify it in some way. So we heard from Fauble, remember, he had the flu. And, you know, he felt confident it wouldn't affect him. Des Linden told us the same thing. She had the flu, but felt confident it wouldn't affect her. But, you know, there's no margin for error in these races. And in any kind of flaw in your preparation was definitely going to play out over these 3 8-mile loops that were so hilly.
Originally, this course was going to play well into the original Tokyo Marathon course, but the Tokyo Marathon has been moved considerably north to Sapporo. How are these two courses going to stack up?
Well, I mean, Sapporo, the course is pretty flat. It's very, very different to this. So you could argue that you're not getting the wrong team selected here. Absolutely, these athletes are running their hearts out for those Olympic places, but it'll be interesting to see how it impacts upon the results of the US team, who had a great time in Rio. Let's not forget that. The US team really excelled themselves at the marathon, men and women, in Rio. But in Tokyo, could be a different story, and people might look back at this and think this could have been the reason.
And this looks like a bit of a breakaway for Tuliamuk. And let's say she has not had the best preparation over the last year or so. Last June, she suffered a stress fracture in her right femur, barely ran a step until the end of August, and didn't race again until she ran the New York City Marathon on November 3rd, where she did finish 12th in 2:28, which was an improvement over her previous run in that race. So a very tough athlete to come back from a very difficult injury.
And when she was injured, she took to driving an Uber to make money. And also she said, because she liked conversing with the passengers. So, yeah, I love that. Back to ground zero and getting on with life when you're injured, and you have to make the ends meet. You have to earn some money.
Getting on with it here inside the final mile here in Atlanta. Back into downtown. And now we continue to look at third place. Sally Kipyego has had it for the longest time. Can she hang on to it? At the moment, it's looking pretty safe.
Yeah, 15 seconds between her and Laura Thweatt in fourth place, and then Des Linden a further 6 seconds back at the last checkpoint, 24, as they went through 24 miles.
Kipyego, in the summer of 2017, gave birth to her daughter Emma. And I like what she said after that, that her body fell apart afterwards. In fact, every time she tried to get back to running, something would happen, some small injury, some small illness. So she's really had to fight to get back to full strength. But she said having a child and fighting to get back has made her mentally stronger.
I want to just not let this broadcast finish without just saying, isn't it tremendous to see the growth of women's distance running? 685 participants and qualifiers took the start of this today. More than double women to the men, and it continues to rise and grow in strength, not only in the US, but all around the world. And you're looking at the top three here, ready to go to Tokyo in July.
And Lee, it's part of a continuum, you know, that dates all the way back to Joan Benoit Samuelson winning the 1984 Olympic Marathon, Dina Castor winning the bronze medal in 2004 in Athens. Since 2016, American women, a bronze medal at the World Championships, Amy Cragg in 2017, Shalane Flanagan winning the New York City Marathon in 2017, Des Linden, Boston in 2018. You know, it's just part of a strengthening of distance running across the board, as Tim said earlier, but especially among the women.
But plenty of big races nowadays around the world are actually seeing more women entering than men. You know, it's a trend that seems unstoppable at the moment. But I have to come back to the differences that I noticed. You know, when I crossed the Atlantic from the UK to over here, where you've got 350 million people, something like that. You've got massive resources. You've got these wonderfully funded squads by shoe companies, and you've got the scholarship system at universities and colleges. So athletes here in the USA probably get more opportunities when their talent starts coming through than any other nation in the world, you know, and they do grasp it with both hands, and good luck to them. And that's the result is you get this incredible quality of racing and quality of athletes.
Aliphine Tuliamuk, the leader in the women's, and she's within half a mile from home. There's been a change a little further back, and that is Des Linden has now moved into fourth over Laura Thweatt. And how far off Sally Kipyego is she? Look in the background. So Des Linden has Kipyego in her sights. Is half a mile going to be enough time, enough distance to catch her?
Yeah, it seems to be about 20 seconds in the last report we had, which is a lot to make up with so little space left in the race. Des Linden never gives up, though.
No, but Des is a great athlete, but she's not one of those athletes who's got the track pedigree in her background, and that'll be too big a gap, surely, as we can see Molly Seidel really suffering now. They're back in second place. Or is it that Tuliamuk is just accelerated? I think it's the latter, Lee, because she is tearing up the roads here in Atlanta.
Keep your eye on Sally Kipyego on the right, and look in the background if indeed Des Linden is able to make up any ground in this last half a mile. For Tuliamuk, the last 0.2 of a mile. You'll see the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in the background. That's the site, that magnificent architectural structure, that $1.6 billion building. Incredible as Tuliamuk is on the home stretch. What a story this women's marathon has given us, with some of the more favored runners, a lot of the more favored runners, not featuring. With such a large pack of the favorites together for such a long portion of this marathon to be broken up over the last 7 or 8 miles. And Aliphine Tuliamuk has just taken off from Molly Seidel.
Hasn't she just yet? That strength, it's not really down to sprint speed, it's just sheer, utter strength that draws you clear in the last stages of a marathon. And in her wake, you can look at athletes like Steph Bruce and Emma Bates and Sisson and so many others that we expected to
Jordan
really feature here today. Jordan Hussey, unbelievable.
Despite the cool and breezy conditions, credit to the marathon fans for coming out here in Atlanta to cheer the men and women on in very challenging conditions, broaching Centennial Olympic Park. And Tuliamuk knows that she's got it, and convincingly so. As soon as you see those pavers there, she's in the park and coming home. Haven't we got some stories to tell on the road to Tokyo? In the women's, it's Aliphine Tuliamuk on her way to Tokyo by winning the Olympic Marathon Trials here in Atlanta. Molly Seidel gets second in her first marathon ever. An incredible performance. And now all eyes are on third. And if Sally Kipyego can hang on to it. Tuliamuk and Seidel.
These two ran so much of the race together, and that hug was as much about a thank you back and forth. And Tim documented it well. Once they broke away, they encouraged one another, and mile by mile they pulled away from the rest of the field by working together, as we see Kipyego still in a safe qualifying position at this point with 200 meters to go.
Well, the times are relatively irrelevant, but 2:27.23, that winning time for Tuliamuk. Fabulous running on this sort of course. And yeah, Kipyego, I think, has enough daylight behind her, enough road behind her, and little enough road in front of her, Lee, to be secure for that place to Tokyo.
That'll be agonizing for Des Linden because she can see it, and it's a downhill conclusion. Sally Kipyego takes a quick look around to see if Des Linden is even close, but she's not. There's the finish. Sally Kipyego, she will make her first Olympic team representing the US, and she gets third to confirm her spot on the US Olympic Marathon team this July. Des Linden, it was not to be in 2020 as she misses out by 1 spot.
Well, that's still a lot better than I think many expected from Des Linden. I mean, let's not forget she's 36 years old, Des. This is her 19th marathon, and she's produced another stunning performance, and heartbreaking at the same time as brilliant.
Des Linden is so tough. She's already announced she'll come back and run the Boston Marathon in mid-April. These two women, both of whom left their native Kenya to go to university in the U.S. got advanced degrees in their chosen specialties, became American citizens, and Tuliamuk talked quite a lot about wanting to realize the American dream, which she did today.
Helen Taylor congratulating the other runners. Delphine Tuliamuk victorious in the women's, and we'll hear from them when we come back here in Atlanta. Time to check out the results presented by ASICS for the men's and women's US Olympic Marathon Trials here in Atlanta. Scenes just a few minutes ago with Tuliamuk and Seidel, and then Sally Kipyego confirming that third and final spot. Remember today, it was not about times, it was about the placings. Top 3 for the men, top 3 for the women, guaranteeing their spots to the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. Here at Centennial Olympic Park, amazing scenes. Galen Rupp, back-to-back Olympic trial winner. And then Jake Riley and Abdi Abdurrahman at the age of 43, making it to Tokyo. There is a lot to talk about at the conclusion of these Olympic trials. Let's check in with Lewis Johnson. He's with the women.
And they're already looking like teammates. What a trio we have here heading to Japan. So first to you, Delphine, give us a sense of what it was like to hold on, then pull away and come in and cross the line first for the win.
It was amazing. I mean, I actually still don't believe that it happened. When we pulled away, Molly and I was like, Molly, let's go, you know, because I knew that I wasn't going to finish it by myself. But I kept thinking, oh my God, this is happening. And then, I mean, there were times where I got nervous that I might get caught. And I thought I probably went out too early. So, but the fact that it happened, I am so grateful. I mean, I've always said that making the Olympic team will be my way of showing my gratitude to this beautiful nation that has given me so much, you know, given me opportunities to help my family, siblings of, we are 32 in my family, yes. And I've been able to help them, you know, because I'm here in the United States, and this is just a big day for me, and I am so grateful to have won the trials.
Incredible performance. Molly, to you. So at Notre Dame, you ran cross country, the 10K, and now here you are in your very first marathon heading to the Olympics. How did you get here?
Oh my gosh, it truly takes a village with this one. It's the people around me. 7 months ago, I raced Peachtree here in Atlanta, messed up my hip and was on crutches for 2 weeks, and I didn't think I was going to be here. Truthfully, it's my coach, it's my family, it's my friends believing in me. I'm still in shock right now. It's the amazing people around me that got me here.
And you got another veteran standing right next to you. Sally, for you, give us an idea of how those last miles were. You had some funny words from a moment ago. How tough was it to hold on and get third?
Oh my God, that was so tough. When these two took off, I basically decided that I was going to hang on and try to hang on to the finish line. But those 3 miles, I don't know who designed this course, but that was something. I felt like, I don't know, I'm going to get to the finish, but I just kept thinking about one foot in front of the other, and just, there's a lot of people. I'm a new mom. Well, I don't know if I mean a new mom. My daughter is just over there, 2 years old. So for me to come back from going to the Olympics and then coming back now as a mom and going back to the Olympics, it's just an honor, and I just want to show my gratitude. I worked really hard today because there's so many people back at home, people that help me around, people that help take care of my girl, that way I can train and recover. I just want to say thank you, and the best way I can do that is run really hard and to have amazing teammates like this, so just wonderful, yeah.
I'm sure little Emma is waiting to get a big hug from you, and ladies, your families, and the United States will look forward to seeing you guys compete in the marathon at the Olympics. Look at that face. You can't believe it. Congratulations.
I don't know what's happening right now.
Lee.
Thank you so much.
Tremendous to hear those reflections. Thanks for that, Lewis, and we should say thank you too to USATF and the Atlanta Track Club. Sally Kipyego's words. Who designed this course?